These were Kurdish guns firing from Kirkuk at Saddam Hussein's loyalist forces. The Peshmergas were bracing themselves for a major conflict.
In Kirkuk, Kurdish guerrillas have stormed the Ba'ath Party headquarters, and the Ba'ath Party leader was assassinated.
The demoralized, humiliated Iraqi army, in retreat from one war, had walked into another conflict with its own people.
The soldiers themselves are gauging just how long they want to stay with Saddam.
This soldier was crying out, "Let all Arabs help the revolution rid Iraq of Saddam Hussein."
The people, they don't want President Saddam Hussein.
Islamic fundamentalists say they control Iraq's second biggest city, Basra, after fighting off an attack by the Republican Guard. Kurdish guerrillas are said to have seized another city in the north.
The distant pall of smoke rising above Basra was the only visible sign of the turmoil in Iraq's second city. This was as far as Western correspondents could get before being turned back. On the road too, armed rebels. They said they were seeking weapons to take back to Basra at the same time as avoiding the Republican Guard still defending the city. Most of the reports of the disturbances have come from refugees fleeing Basra.
They shoot everybody, they fight everybody, everywhere.
The people, they don't want President Saddam Hussein. They killed the police and Arab associates.
The rebels in Basra are loyal to the Shiite cleric Ayatollah Bakr al-Kahim, whom Saddam deported to Iran with thousands of his supporters. Today he told a news conference in Tehran that low-ranking Iraqi army officers had joined the popular revolt, which he claimed had destroyed 100 Republican Guard tanks in a raging battle. He also said Basra's governor and mayor had been killed, a report Shia opposition groups in London have received independently.
People took into street and surrounded the government offices, and the governor, mayor and the chief police inspector, they fled their offices to go to the Red Crescent office, and they were surrounded there, captured and get killed. And after that, people are looking for the hardcore of the Ba'athists. Some of them have already fled Basra.
Refugees fleeing to Iran also told reporters Saddam's eldest son Udi had been killed in the unrest, which opposition groups believe is spreading. As well as the uprising in Basra, fleeing refugees have reported demonstrations in several southern towns, including Al-Amara, Al-Nazariya and Al-Qut, according to Tehran radio. The Iranian news agency also reported demonstrations in Abu al-Qasib. But apart from unrest in Shia areas, there's also reported to be trouble to the north among Saddam's traditional opponents, the Kurds, who are said to have been involved in clashes with government forces in Sulaymaniyah and Mosul. And tonight, Kurdish sources in London have told us that in Kirkuk, Ba'athist party members have been attacked and killed.
We have heard today is that in Kirkuk, Kurdish guerrillas have stormed the Ba'ath Party headquarters, and during that storm of the party headquarters, the Ba'ath Party leader was assassinated. That came through today through people who are in the area who have been able to cross over to Turkey and communicate with the outside world.
Neither from bomb-damaged Basra nor elsewhere is there independent confirmation of any of the reports of a popular uprising, and much of the information is coming from those who'd like to see Saddam overthrown. Yet, having led his country to a futile war, Saddam Hussein is inevitably under threat, and today he was reported to be bringing back 7,000 soldiers to Baghdad to help retain his hold on power.
There are coordination on a military level and on a political level as well between the Islamic groups and the Kurdish group.
Another report which we got through is that there are 500 Kurdish fighters who are in Basra fighting with Muhammad Bakr al-Hakim's forces who are there.
So it is a joint campaign, as it was?
Most certainly.
Whatever the reality inside Iraq, tonight the Allies, still holding their position south of Basra, reiterated they would play no part in Iraq's domestic politics, even to restore law and order.
The rebellions from the Kurds and the Shias form a potent threat to Saddam Hussein, After leading his country to national disaster, he faces almost universal opposition, but how he'll be deposed and what will replace his regime is far from clear. The remnants of Saddam Hussein's army are apparently split between defending his regime and rebelling against it. The uprisings began in the Shiite heartland of southern Iraq. Shias form the majority in the country, but are poor and almost powerless under Saddam Hussein. Rebels now control towns from Samawa through to Al-Amara. In the north, Kurds have apparently seized control of Suleymaniye and may have killed the Ba'ath Party leader in Kirkuk. The Shias have a powerful incentive for opposing Saddam Hussein. Most of the thousands of conscripts who died in the trenches of Kuwait were Shias. Their plans may be forestalled by the men who already hold the reins of power, the army and the Ba'ath Party, mostly Sunni Muslims. If they depose Saddam Hussein, it's a solution that would find favour with some of the political opposition.
I believe we will need a sort of military government for the first 3 to 6 months to keep the country in one piece, to control the society, to avoid and prevent any revenge and killing without trial, without respecting the institution we were promising the Iraqi people for the last 20 years.
But Saddam Hussein has not yet been deposed. Elements of the Republican Guard are reported moving to Baghdad from the Turkish border, summoned to help him survive. As refugees stream from the country, southern Iraq is gripped by confusion and disorder. Troops from Saddam Hussein's Republican Guard are reported fighting other soldiers for control of Basra. Eyewitnesses fleeing provide only sketchy details of what's happening.
A revolution is going there.
Is it now?
Yeah.
The revolution?
Yeah.
Is there a lot of fighting?
Yeah, a lot of fighting between the Republican army and the Republican guards and the people there.
Saddam Hussein?
Saddam Hussein not.
Finish.
The uprising began in Basra. Shiite rebels seized control of the city from Saddam Hussein's men and appointed a new city governor. But it was reported today that Saddam's Republican Guards are fighting back and have re-established control in a northern sector of the city. The uprising spread west and north to a number of towns, including the holy cities of Najaf and Karbala, carrying the threat of insurrection towards the capital Baghdad. And in the north of Iraq, where the Kurdish minority has been brutally repressed by Saddam Hussein, Suleymaniye is reported controlled by rebels. And it's said there's fighting in other towns, including Arbil and Rania. The insurgency is driven by anger at the slaughter and surrender in Kuwait, which is being firmly blamed on Saddam Hussein. Most of those who suffered are Shia Muslims. Now they want an Iraqi Shia cleric to return from exile in Iran to form a new government.
First priority for him, as I understand, now is to encourage the Iraqi people to move against Saddam Hussein. And the second aim is to topple Saddam Hussein.
Shia sources say the uprising has spread to Baghdad. They say the Abu Ghraib prison was stormed and many political prisoners freed.
What we can confirm is there are several members of Al-Dawa party who are free in the streets of Baghdad, which is a very encouraging sign.
3 miles from the center of Basra, and the demoralized, humiliated Iraqi army, in retreat from one war, had walked into another conflict with its own people. Saddam Hussein's second city had been overrun by pro-Iranian Shiites. Republican Guard reinforcements were forming up to pound the city with artillery as we drove on into the front line. The soldiers suddenly realized we were foreign journalists. We were seized and forced to sit at gunpoint by the wheels of a tank while our cars were systematically looted. After 5 days of imprisonment, with the return of our camera, Sam Gracie managed to film the airlift to Baghdad, the Iraqis unaware that our equipment was still working. What we're not able to show were the scenes of destruction inside the city, which we witnessed while being moved around by our captors. United Nations helicopters, which had been used at the end of the Iran-Iraq war, were in the hands of the Iraqi Air Force. The Republican Guards were using the city's university as their base in the battle for Basra. We had witnessed barrages from artillery, T-72 tanks, and multiple rocket launchers targeted at the center of the city. Fighting was still going on as we left. the insurrection was far from over. This ruined city with no water, power or sanitation caused by the Allied bombardment, which cut off most of its road links, was being steadily throttled by Saddam's forces. It was impossible to gauge how many Iraqi soldiers had defected, though. With us on this flight, the last 2 American prisoners of war, men more relieved than us at this flight, which was to end at a military base outside Baghdad. There was bewilderment here. The wait for a handover to the Red Cross was another 24 hours away as we rummaged through the remnants of equipment. This afternoon, freedom on the Iraq-Jordan border, and the first opportunity to tell of what the world didn't know about Basra.
The soldiers themselves are gauging just how long they want to stay with Saddam, when there are real problems, and this Iranian influence could be taking place as well, is causing real problems for everybody.
We walked out of this safely, and nearly all Western journalists are now banished from Iraq, unable to witness moves now underway to crush the uprising. Andrew Simmons, ITN in Amman.
You take care.
An assault helicopter disappears over a ridge a few miles south of one of the first liberated Kurdish towns, Kirkuk. Kurdish fighters watch it return. Slowly, with no apparent ground fire to distract the crew, it took aim and fired a salvo of rockets. That kind of attack is not uncommon this far north, according to those who can testify. The north of Iraq is where Saddam Hussein's problems are now most acute, and the abandoned Iraqi army tanks, gun barrels drooping in the rain, tell their own story. Mechanized armor like this was left in disarray, but intact by soldiers who refused to go on spilling the blood of their own people. These units were provided with the most modern weaponry to wage that war, like Milan anti-tank missiles. But the men refused, and tens of thousands of ex-government troops are reported to have simply walked away from the army, volunteered to change sides, or gone home. These officers all defected. One army colonel, a battalion commander of 700 men, is now fighting for the resistance.
He said, I'm glad the revelation is strong and will be stronger and Saddam will be loose.
Does he think he made the right decision?
Right decision. Allah شعورك أو قرارك صحيحة. Of course, that's yes.
These former Saddam troops, Arabs not Kurds, admitted listening to their own conscience and laying down arms in a series of mass desertions and defections. This soldier was crying out, "Let all Arabs help the revolution rid Iraq of Saddam Hussein." For that is what it has become, an Iraqi revolution. It seems to be carried by the will of the people and fed by the crumbling of state control over the army in the north of the country. The signs are clear. From the destruction of Saddam's portraits, an act that's technically still punishable by death, to the behavior of Kurdish people everywhere. When the Kurdish forces had enough firepower and army defectors on their side, they turned their attacks against the foundation of Saddam Hussein's rule, the Iraqi Ba'ath Party. Party officials who refused to surrender were either killed or captured. One of their establishments took a tank and rocket assault before Ba'athist rule in the small town of Sumail was ended. Better battle organized than their Shia counterparts in the south, the Kurds want an all-party provisional government in the liberated areas, conditional on external recognition.
We want to struggle with other Arab parties, and we hope that we can liberate Iraq from the dictatorial regime and Saddam Hussein.
Not all routes between Kurdish-held centres were secure at the time of this report, necessitating long detours through remote areas. Even out here we found villagers holding army deserters who were attempting to skirt round government-held areas. Estimates of the numbers of troops who broke away from their units range from 20 to 30,000. However, unless the Peshmerga fighters can better organize their long lines of supply, they may soon have to admit to severe logistical shortcomings. Erbil was one of the biggest cities to fall, along with Kirkuk further south. There is a sense of overwhelming relief here. Yet the Kurdish leadership does not intend to advance on Baghdad, less than 4 hours' drive from here, unless it's spearheaded by rebel Arab units of the Iraqi army and supported by all political parties. Life in so-called liberated Iraq, meanwhile, is no less unpleasant than it is in government-controlled provinces. Shortages of food and medicine, no satisfactory water and electricity supplies could take months to put right, regardless of the international relief effort that's getting underway. Brent Sadler, ITN, Erbil, inside Iraq. These were Kurdish guns firing from Kirkuk at Saddam Hussein's loyalist forces before the start of his attempt to retake the city. Kirkuk fell to opposition government forces more than a week ago and was their major prize. Since then, the oil capital of the north was under almost daily attack by government artillery and a steady escalation in the number of raids by helicopter gunships. Kirkuk's inhabitants were convinced Saddam Hussein was using these rocket attacks, often against civilian targets, as a weapon of terror. If so, it appeared to have worked, with people streaming out of Kirkuk all week and heading to safer areas in the north. Perhaps a quarter of the city's 600,000 inhabitants left their homes. The city emptied, and people are existing under dire conditions, deteriorating daily.
They are without food, they are without water, they are without health care, without every human being human need they are without.
By late yesterday afternoon, Saddam Hussein's forces were attacking the main Kirkuk highway, splitting the rebel supply line and threatening to push on the city. Kurdish guerrilla reinforcements massed under rocket attacks from helicopters circling overhead. They were expecting to face a 35,000-strong government force, roughly double their own fighters. A conflict the Peshmerga resistance is neither trained or equipped for. They have always existed as a lightly armed partisan force, accustomed to guerrilla warfare in the mountains, not an urban ground battle against heavy armor, artillery, and air power. Nevertheless, the Peshmergas were bracing themselves for a major conflict, which could prove to be a turning point in their challenge to the regime of Baghdad. The build-up of fighting men from 16 to 60 years of age took most of the day. Many came from small Kurdish tribes whose chiefs pledged their support for a united Kurdish front against the Iraqi dictator. The resolve of this ragtag army was not in question. Their many weaknesses were of a practical nature, with reinforcements, for instance, held up in huge traffic jams, waiting for petrol. Their range of weapons was limited in the face of what would almost certainly be an enemy superior in organization and firepower. That point was soon made. Up to 10,000 rebels had gathered in open countryside, some 30 miles north of Kirkuk, when the helicopter gunships came in much closer for a ground assault. They hovered and watched before launching salvos of rockets. They narrowly missed their target. The helicopters flew high and just beyond the range of accuracy for the Kurdish guns. Right now, 3 army helicopters are about 2 miles to my right over there, and the Kurdish guerrillas are throwing up a great deal of ground-to-air fire. The barrage of anti-aircraft fire fell short of the targets. The guerrillas had no surface-to-air missiles to seriously threaten the airstrikes. The Kurds, though, are quite undeterred by their shortcomings in the theatre of battle and have showed no sign of moral weakness in their attempt to topple Saddam Hussein. Brent Sadler, ITN, outside Kirkuk in northern Iraq. The truth about Saddam Hussein's ways of maintaining his grip on power at all costs was spreading. These pictures of death recall the gas attack on Halabja, in which countless thousands died. They'd heard the rumors, but this was the first time they could see it for themselves. Today, the town of Halabja is reawakening after 3 years of enforced silence and emptiness. As soon as they could, the survivors began to return. Some 2,000 people, a tenth of the original township, went back immediately and were attempting to rebuild their homes. At this slow rate, with wholly inadequate tools and equipment, it would take them years to complete. Providing that was, the Kurds retained control of their areas. Following the chemical attack, Iraq's government ordered Halabja's destruction and moved the population to a new settlement 40 miles away. They were forbidden from ever returning as punishment for supporting Iran in the war with Baghdad. Iraq's president called their alternative home Saddam City, and the Kurds hated living there.
Yes.
We should like to get back to Halabja because it's our home, and we'll be very happy if Saddam gone forever, because he used chemical weapons against our civilian people and innocent people.
Life was all but squeezed out of the town, and their attempt to revive it is nothing less than courageous. But there remain some grim reminders of the past, like the contents of this bomb shelter. The unrecognizable remains of some victims were found here. They were removed and put into a shallow grave. The family's name was scribbled on a wall to remind people of who they were and how many died. There are crushing odds against these people succeeding in turning back the clock. They have no electricity, no communications, poor water, hardly any money to rebuild the devastation, and virtually no food. This woman was preparing an edible form of grass to feed her family of 6 children. At the other end of town, a food wagon was besieged by hungry people. They could only buy 1 small bag of potatoes each. Nothing else was on sale. No one told the people of Halabja to go back. No one is saying whether or not it's healthy for the families to return, or how long their freedom to stay will go on. It is dangerous for children to be here. This boy was carrying the warhead from an old anti-tank rocket. If Saddam Hussein defeats the Kurdish rebellion, they can expect harsh reprisals. As the Kurds continue to resettle their lands, the aim on the international level is to strip the country of its ability to store and manufacture chemical weapons. No Iraqi leader would then be able to repeat the horror committed here. Brent Sadler, ITN, Halabja, northern Iraq.
Victorious Iraqi soldiers moving through the wreckage of the battle for Kirkuk. Journalists were taken there as a group, but we toured enough of the town today to be able to say with some confidence that the government's forces now control it again. And during our 2.5-hour visit, we neither heard nor saw anything to indicate that resistance by the rebels is continuing. Their hold here had lasted about a week. The cost of retaking the town is more difficult to determine. Some of the bodies we found were too burnt to identify as soldier or civilian, rebel or loyalist. There was 1 child among them. But the provincial governor, brother of Iraq's interior minister, said casualties had been low because the rebels had been defeated within 2 hours.
They are inhuman, and they have come here to implement evil and criminal acts. After a short time, they ran away, fleeing outside the city like rats.
The Iraqis accused the rebels of looting Kirkuk. This, we were told, was the supermarket, said to have been set on fire after the goods were stolen. We saw large numbers of Iraqi troops being moved along the roads here, and many more were coming up the highway from Baghdad throughout the day. The authorities say the rebels have been driven at least 30 miles from Kirkuk. They seem confident that the counter-offensive now underway will be successful, that they will soon have recaptured all the territory between here and Iraq's northern borders. Edward Sturton, ITN, Kirkuk.
Not safe to go in the night, please. Okay.
An Iraqi government tank guards the entrance to the holiest shrine of the Shiites. The soldiers here told us that the rooms of the mosque's library nearby had been used as execution chambers by the rebels. Whoever was responsible, and there have been accusations of atrocities from both sides, it is evident that the battle for control of the holy cities of Karbala and Najaf was fought with great ferocity. The Iraqi government blames the desecration of the holy places on what officials refer to as criminals. We were told they'd burnt documents to destroy their records, that within the mosque at Karbala they'd hanged 6 people. It was conceded that some of the Shiite population of Karbala had supported the rebels while they controlled the city. The governor told us that many had been tricked into doing so. He also claimed that hundreds were killed by the rebels, but he put the number of people killed in the crossfire during the fighting at between 20 and 30. A remarkably low figure in the light of the damage done here. The battle for Karbala was no small-arms skirmish. What we saw was consistent with the use of tanks and rocket-propelled grenades. We have, of course, come here too late to be able to establish precisely what happened during the period of rebel control and the battle that followed. But the fact that the Iraqi authorities have allowed us to come here at all is a mark of the confidence they feel at the moment. They believe things are going well for them now, and they're anxious that the world should know that. Edward Sturton, ITN, Karbala.
لا بعد شو عم يتابع والله صدقني بلش بالدخان
بس لو واحد يراجع له بيجي حاجه اي واحد يقول له ما حد يقبل راح تتفلش على اغراضنا ايش بلد
Yeah, nice.
Yeah? Some better stuff coming here.
Ham shop.
حاج ارجع 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 حرك ولا تحرك حرك بعدين قدام
Please, sir. We're in a hurry.
John?
Good evening. News at 10 has exclusive pictures tonight of the exposed conditions above the snowline on the Iraqi border where thousands of Kurds face death. In the mountains between Turkey and Iraq, 150 people have died from cold and hunger in the past 5 days. As many as 2 million are reported to be there tonight, sleeping in the snow once again, trying to escape from the Iraqi army. Today there were reports that Iraqi soldiers killed several refugees in a mortar bomb attack. Tonight, ITN's Andrew Simmons in Ul-Udara, where he reports from a Kurdish refugee camp above the snowline.
Another day and one more step closer to death for the families of the Kurdish exodus. In this area alone, dozens more children have fallen sick in the past 24 hours. They were able to descend from the icy peaks of this mountain range, while others were forced by the Turkish army to stay. We were the first people from the outside world to visit the mountain refugees. We drove 10 miles up a muddy track too slippery for the food supply lorries to get through. We arrived to witness the desperate plight of people trying to survive in the ice and snow in which one man described as a cold hell. Some had no shelter at all. Others made do with plastic sheeting, huddled together in despair. These people have been here for 5 days. There was little we could do for them except make promises that we convey to the outside world the fact that time has already run out for them.
People are now clamoring for the supplies that have just arrived. The situation here is desperate beyond belief.
But it turned out to be only a few loaves of bread from soldiers in a military ambulance heading further up the mountain, where streams of refugees are still trekking across the peaks, seeking safety, only to be told they can go no further. A consultant pediatrician who had fled from his hospital said 150 people had already died in this area.
You're a medical doctor, you come from a middle-class background. What do you make of what is happening here?
I do nothing, because I have nothing. No stethoscope, no sphygmomanometer, no medicine.
You cannot do anything for these people?
We expect helps from America, from France, from Britannia, from any country. We are very need helps. No helps, nothing, no eat, no medical, no house. And when you want to eat, no, you don't kitchen. No.
Are you angry with Turkey for not letting you through?
Of course.
The only solution is to put out Saddam and to allow those people to go back.
Why can't you let them through? Surely that would be
It's not
some
the
sort of
solution. It's not the solution.
What is happening here is a human tragedy of colossal proportion. All around these mountains, tens of thousands of people are freezing, desperate and hungry. And in these appalling conditions, some of them are dying. This woman with a seriously ill baby tried to sum the situation up. Tell everyone they either save us or kill us. Andrew Simmons, News at 10 on the Iraq border.
Now you see all the tires and the wheels are loose. All these cars were recollected from the street.
هاي كل المخربين دمروا الشغلات هاي.
They are done by.
About first.
We have 9 ambulances are working. Out of which one?
Out of
90? Those in the villages and other towns.
No, no.